everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie.
And we really hope you're enjoying our little grim bits of coal.
They are kind of fun to do, actually.
They are kind of fun to do. I'm kind of digging this. We may have to shorten all our episodes after this.
Just maybe. So are you ready for Christmas?
I am not ready for Christmas. And right now we're a week into December. I still love my fall decorations. I wish I could keep them up all through December. But the neighbors had like all their Christmas stuff up like day before Thanksgiving. And I was just kind of like, no, not ready to give it up yet.
They were holiday shaming you?
Yeah, pretty much. And then, you know, what I do is I put it off so long that then it's too close to Christmas. And I'm like, why bother? But I'm not a Scrooge.
You're like you get a tree up at this point.
I know. And then, you know, people come over and they're like, oh, you're still in Thanksgiving mode. It's like, that's my happy place. Leave me alone.
March rolls around. Maybe I should put the tree up.
Why does everybody have, eggs and bunnies up? And I still got my pumpkins out.
You do love your pumpkins.
I do. So what is your little grim bit going to be about today?
It's pretty savage, actually.
Oh, wow.
So are we ready?
I haven't read anything about this, so I'm going to be hearing it with everybody else.
Okay, well, let's get our grim on.
Let's do this.
Christmas in the 90s in Dayton, Ohio was lively. The city celebrated by decorating for the holiday. There was a children's parade, a holiday parade with a tree lighting. It was a wonderful time of year. The Goulet family, with 8 children, had its traditions. Each sibling received one gift, but to them, the best part was just getting together to celebrate Christmas with each other. Their mom made a big meal that included a family favorite of chili and cornbread.
Oh, that sounds good right now.
Dr. Rhonda Goulet remembers, quote, I'm the oldest of my brothers and sisters, so we are like the Brady Bunch. When you're from a family, you hear these stories about losing brothers and sisters early, and so that was a big fear of mine. So I was always watching my brothers and sisters very closely. I just became my mother's right hand, and that was the dynamic of my family. End quote. It's Christmas Eve, 1992. Rhonda and her mom wait for her sister, Danita, to come home from work before they enjoy the holiday. Danita is Rhonda's 18-year-old sister who attends St. Clair Community College, works full-time, and raises her 2-year-old daughter named Dominique.
Those are some pretty names. I like them.
Around 10 p.m., the phone rings, but no one's there. A little frustrated, Rhonda tells her mother that it's getting late, will celebrate in the morning, and takes her niece Dominique home. A little after 10 p.m., Detective Doyle Burke gets a page that a teenage girl has been shot outside a phone booth in northwest Dayton. Detectives, including Doyle Burke, arrive at the scene. Burke's assessment is, quote, the scene itself, there's obviously some blood, and it appears she was just standing at the phone booth when she had been shot, and she's been hit 5 times. She was shot in the chest, legs, and hand, which is indicative of defensive wounds, in that she was trying to fend off or, shield herself from the attack, end quote.
5 times?
5 times.
Wow, that's overkill.
But Danita Goulet never had a chance. She had a backpack, but no shoes or jacket. Since it was cold outside, it didn't seem like she would have gone out without these things. Around her were aluminum-cased ammunition shells called blazers. Detectives found this strange since those rounds are used for target practice and are disposable. Side note about these rounds, a disposable round means that you can't reuse the shell casing. A non-disposable have a small circular hole that is the primer on the bottom that can be punched out and the shells can be reused. Disposable is just solid across the bottom.
That is really interesting. This is good information.
The things that we learn.
Right? I'm learning so much. I'm going to be so much smarter.
Yes, but what we're learning about probably I can learn about some butterflies and rainbows, but no. A call was placed to Danita's mother notifying her of what happened to Danita. Distraught, she called her daughter Rhonda. Rhonda said, quote, I got a call from my mother. She said Nita was gone. And when she told me Nita was gone, I just threw the phone and I just ran out the door and started screaming and crying and pleading with the Lord for it not to be true." End quote. They couldn't believe that Danita was killed over a flannel jacket that she bought at a thrift store and a pair of gym shoes. She remembers them being pricey, but not worth killing her sister over.
Oh, I didn't even grasp that that's what they had done. That's horrible.
It's horrifying.
Wow.
Detectives talked to the family to see if there were problems, if Danita had enemies, or if there might have been domestic abuse. There was nothing but a supportive family. Detectives figure it was just someone out to rob someone else, and possibly it escalated if she resisted. Hours later, Detective Burke rejoins his family to enjoy what's left of Christmas Day when his pager goes off again for a second time in 24 hours. Detective Burke, quote, "Dispatch said we had a young male who had been shot in the head. The vehicle struck a tree at a fairly decent rate of speed." End quote. The victim was Richmond Maddox, 19 years old. At the scene, detectives noticed that neither the driver's side or passenger side windows were broken or have any bullet holes in them. All of the brain matter and blood splatter is on the inside of the driver's side window and very little on the passenger side. This would indicate a passenger could have shot him.
Oh my gosh, what's happening?
Crazy out there. Detective Doyle Burke remarked, quote, "That's a pretty gutsy move because if you're shooting the driver of a car, you're traveling at a high rate of speed, you know. Now that car is going to be like an unmanned missile." End quote. Confirming their theory, a witness came forward to say they saw a young female jump from the moving car before it went on to hit the tree.
Okay, I didn't see that coming.
They couldn't find shell casings at the Richmond Maddox crime scene, but it was very close to the Danita Galette's murder hours earlier. The two killings were done at close range and in the same area. Speculations that they are connected begins to form. Detectives conduct their interview with Richmond's friends and family, inquiring if he may have had an issue with someone or if they knew anyone who may have wanted to hurt Richmond. The one person that was mentioned in the interviews was his ex-girlfriend, Laura Taylor. Journalist Wendy Williams said of Laura that, quote, "She was a very sweet, petite, really intelligent teenage girl," end quote. Hoping to find some answers, detectives go to speak with Laura Taylor. However, she was missing, and her family didn't know where she was. Growing concern for her safety begins to mount. They now start to search for her. In the meantime, the medical examiner recovered the bullet from Richmond Maddox. It was a .32 caliber. This bullet would be used in a Derringer or revolver, but it was a different bullet than the one that was used on Danita Galette. The idea that they were linked no longer seemed viable.
That's interesting.
Especially since they were so close, you'd think.
Right. What are the chances that, at that close distance, two shooting murders are going to happen?
Mm-hmm. It's the day after Christmas. Detectives are actively investigating two murders and a missing persons when Detective Burke is dispatched to a shooting at a family-owned mini-mart called Shortstop on the west side of Dayton. Upon arrival, they see blood everywhere. Evidence technicians have to collect samples and fingerprints off candy and products for sale. While looking through the mini-mart, they find the spent .25 automatic shell casings. These were the same shell casings that were found at the crime scene of Danita Galette. There is also a witness to the shooting, Jimmy Thompson, 71 years old, who occasionally worked at the store.
Okay, hang on. A 71-year-old man named Jimmy? I'm sorry. I'm like, for real though? Can we not go with James?
Well,
even Jim.
Everybody knew him as Jimmy. Probably.
How about Jimbo? Jimmy sounds
Jim
like...
Dog.
Yeah. Jimmy... Okay, I've said enough.
You digress.
Yeah, I digress. I was like, huh?
He told detectives a young female came in to purchase some items. Once she left, two males came in carrying handguns. The men demanded money from the lady behind the counter. She gave them the money, but they went on a shooting rampage anyway. The woman behind the counter was Sarah Abraham. She was shot in the face. Her family owned the mini-mart. A customer in the store was also shot. They were both rushed to the hospital, but Sarah passed away.
My gosh.
Jimmy Thompson was also shot at, but fortunately not hit. He said, quote, "I just went ahead and laid down and acted like I was dead," end quote.
That's what I would do. All right, Jimmy, you're not so bad after all, because that's exactly what I would do. I'd be like, yep, I'm dead already. Move on.
Takask Abraham, Sarah's brother, says, quote, "Sarah would do anything to help people. She was loved by the community where she was working. When she was gone, it was terrible because she was the star of the family," end quote. He continues, "I talked to her early in the morning when she opened the store. She said, 'I just opened. I'm about to get ready. I'll talk to you later.'" Now, this is one of the reasons why I regularly say I love you to my family after I talk to them or see them, because you just never know. And I know they know that I love them, but I just like to say it just in case.
Yeah, because you know what? Even though it, in the grand scheme of things, shouldn't make a difference what our last words were to people, because there was probably many wonderful words before that. That does seem to be a thing that sticks in our mind. Their last words to me were, you know what I mean? And I don't know why it's such a defining thing, but it is. So I agree with you. I always tell my kids I love them.
And I have a story
And
about
my
that.
husband. I should throw that in.
I do have a story about that, but that's for another time. But I love you, T.
Oh, I love you too, B. Like how I threw that in.
Right. Doyle Burke stated, quote, "It's clear that the mini mart was a robbery, but there was no reason to shoot anyone. The money was surrendered. That's what causes the most concern," end quote. Starting Christmas Eve, there has been 3 people killed and 1 seriously injured when dispatch calls detectives about a carjacking in the same neighborhood. A woman was filling the tires of her black Dodge Shadow. I've never heard of this car.
I totally have.
Okay. All right. The 2 armed males approached her, pointing the gun at her. One of them says, quote, "You will die today," end quote.
Yeesh.
She turns and runs. They begin to fire, but she gets away unhurt. Good for her.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? This is why I need to get my butt on the treadmill.
You're preparing for this.
Preparing for this.
Preparing to be a target.
That's right. The men end up stealing her car.
Let them have it. Who cares?
Right? At the scene, police find 25 caliber automatic shell casings, the same casings from the mini mart and the Danita Gillette shooting. The woman was able to describe the men matching the description that Jimmy Thompson had given. Another link to 3 out of the 4 murders. The city of Dayton is being bombarded with news coverage and people are feeling very afraid. Could they be next? Detective Burke expresses, quote, "That's the one time of year that everybody is kind of friendly to everybody, and everything is good, and everybody is happy. They are looking forward to Christmas, and now you're basically afraid to even stick your head out of the house," end quote.
Yeah, I'd be afraid too. I'd be staying home.
Especially since it doesn't seem to be there's any motive.
Yeah, it's like that sniper guy that he was like just killing anybody he saw.
Mm-hmm.
The one, what was it, Washington or D.C. or something? Anyway, all right.
Trying to find a connection between the victims, more interviews are conducted with the families, only to reveal there is absolutely none. Sergeant James Huber, Dayton Police Department, is concerned. Quote, "The last thing you wanted, a random suspect running around shooting people for no apparent reason and connection," end quote.
That makes it so much harder for the police.
Mm-hmm.
So much harder.
Well, because you don't have a common thread.
Right. You have no idea what to expect next.
The one thing the police have going for them at this point is the black Dodge Shadow. John Huber decides to drive through the neighborhoods that stolen cars are known to end up in. He knows the license number of the Shadow, FMB 186, which he thought might make it easier to find. While canvassing the areas, he drives down Comer Street and spots a parked black Shadow. He looks at the license plate, but it is the wrong number. He gets out of the car and notices a Pontiac Grand Am parked in front of the Shadow. The back plate was missing from the Grand Am. The window was broken out on the driver's side. A key was shoved into the ignition, and the steering column was broken. He looks at the front of the Grand Am to find the license plate with the number FMB 186. Now that's real genius as far as criminal. Let's take it off of one to the other.
That's parked literally right in front of it. I mean, I want to give this detective a lot of credit for getting out and actually putting it together.
And
right.
checking, right.
But at the same time, you're like, stupid criminals.
Mm-hmm.
You're just dumb.
Realizing the plates had been switched, Huber runs the information on the Grand Am. It was registered to Joseph Wilkerson. Sergeant Huber decides to stake out the house where the shadow is parked to see if anyone comes out. Detective Burke goes to Joseph Wilkerson's house, knocks on the door, but no one answers. Looking around outside to see if there's signs of anyone, the detectives notice an odor coming from the house, which we all know is never good.
That depends on what kind of odor. If it's lasagna, I'm all in.
Well, that's a good smell, not an odor. They decide to check inside, but very cautiously. It looked as though someone had ransacked the house as they made their way through. They approached the bedroom and found a male body.
Oh.
He was identified as Joseph Wilkerson, 34. Joseph was tied to all 4 bedposts, naked, spread eagle, and shot twice. He was shot once in the chest and the second time in the head. The detectives figured that he had been killed a few days earlier due to the amount of decomposition. They also found .25 caliber automatic blazer shell casings.
What the heck is going on? People have lost their minds.
The media coverage was extreme. The city was in a state of fear, and the detectives had a shooting spree on their hands. Through the media, there was a tip line looking for anything that could help them locate the killers. They had received a call from Nicholas Woodson. Nicholas had shed some light on who they might be. He had hung out with a group that called themselves the Downtown Posse. The group...
I'm sorry. That was an inappropriate giggle.
This is what she does.
I'm like, I was like, okay.
The group included teenagers and young adults that had dropped out of high school or were runaways. They lived on the streets. Nicholas said, quote, the Downtown Posse was bragging about all these homicides, end quote. He said that they had given him details of the killings, but they were afraid someone was going to snitch. He was not involved in any of the crimes, but was in fear for his life. Nicholas Woodson gave detectives the names of the main members: DeMarcus Smith, Heather Matthews, Marvalis Keene, and Laura Taylor. Detectives were like, what the what? They thought Laura Taylor was missing this whole time. It turns out she was the recruiter. Marvalis Keene was the leader of the posse.
How did I know that? The name gave it away.
Marvalis?
Marvelous.
Yeah. The interview continues with Nicholas Woodson. Detectives ask him exactly what he knew. Nicholas tells them what happened with Richmond Maddox, the man who was shot in his car on Christmas. He says, quote, the girl was limping and she was talking about, I shot him in the head. I shot him in the head. The car didn't stop. That's why I jumped out, and she had a cut on her hand, end quote. Nicholas was shocked and said that they didn't have to do that. The posse laughed. While the interview continued, Sergeant Huber was still staking out the house on Coomer Street where the shadow was parked. After a few hours, 3 people get into the car and drive off. Huber follows them and calls for backup. He puts on his lights and pulls them over. As soon as they stop, one person jumps out of the car and takes off running. Backup hadn't arrived yet, so he had to let him go. But 2 suspects are still in the car. Detective Doyle Burke said, quote, Sergeant Huber is outside his vehicle now. He hears the female telling the male, shoot him now, end quote. Huber holds them in the vehicle knowing they are potential suspects. Sergeant Huber recalls, quote, I just concentrated on the driver, and my whole focus is getting everybody in custody without anyone getting hurt, end quote.
I wonder why he pulled him over without backup.
I don't think he wanted them to get away. I would think he was afraid that they might have gotten away if he didn't stop them.
I'm sure he had his reasons, but that seems awfully dangerous. Yeah, I mean, he knows they're shooting everybody they see.
They were potential suspects. They weren't actual suspects yet, so.
Yeah, but.
I know, you wouldn't take that chance.
We know the deal.
But
yeah.
The 2 people in the car were identified as Laura Taylor and Marvalis Keene. As Keene is being arrested, they notice he is wearing a flannel jacket, the same type of flannel jacket that was stolen from Danita Gillette.
Oh my gosh, this guy's an idiot.
Oh, believe me, there's more.
Oh Lord, here we go.
The Shadow is searched, and they find a .25 caliber automatic pistol loaded with aluminum cased ammunition and a .32 caliber Derringer. .32 caliber is the same that had killed Richmond Maddox.
Yeah, let's just tape it to my body. All this evidence. It's awesome.
They still need to find the man that ran from the car. So the first place they head is the house on Coomer Street. And sure enough, they find him, DeMarcus Smith and Heather Matthews. They are both arrested, and while walking to the police car, it is noticed that DeMarcus is wearing the exact same type of gym shoes that were taken from Danita Gillette. So a funny little saying that police that I know say, we never catch the smart ones.
Exactly. That couldn't be more true in this situation. And why are they wearing women's clothes? Both the guys are wearing something that a girl was wearing.
The flannel jacket was more unisex.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the tennis shoes. They were the gym shoes. They were the same.
Seems odd. You know how sometimes people get real like, I'm not going to wear that. That's for girls. And they're all over it.
And they're going, these are expensive. I'm wearing them.
Yeah.
All 4 suspects have been arrested, and investigators need to see who's willing to talk. They start with Laura Taylor, since she is the youngest at 16.
16? And
16.
She's already ordering people to kill men? Kill cops?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wanting to make her feel comfortable, investigators ask her if she is hungry, wanted something to drink, or maybe had to use the restroom. Taylor didn't say a word, but stood up, peed on the floor, and sat back down. Now, that's just a special kind of depravity, if you ask me.
I don't know. There's part of me that's kind of going, wow, I'm impressed. That is nerves of steel right there.
That's ballsy. Obviously, she wasn't going to be the one that talked.
You think? Yep, I think that said it all. That little squat said it all.
Investigators started questioning the other 3. Marvalis Keene, 19, DeMarcus Smith, 17, and Heather Matthews, 20. And they all start putting the pieces of the events together. Heather Matthews started laying out what happened with Joseph Wilkerson, the guy that was tied up and shot in his bedroom. Laura and Marvalis asked Heather if she wanted to go rob this guy. I'm guessing there was no movie playing that was good on that night or something.
No, they were going to make their own movie.
Apparently. One of the brilliant teenage minds came up with the idea of contacting Wilkerson, thinking he might pay for sex, and asked him if he wanted to have an orgy. When they arrived, the 2 girls went into the bedroom. Laura began to undress, and Joseph is already naked. Marvalis comes into the bedroom, gun in hand, telling the girls to tie him up, then sending them to go steal whatever they could. Marvalis grabs a pillow and puts it on Joseph's chest, as he begs not to be shot, but he shoots him anyway. 1 in the chest. The girls come running back in. Heather was shocked, but Laura takes the gun and shoots him in the head. Now this is Heather telling the police all of this.
Wow.
When detectives ask Marvalis about Joseph Wilkerson and why he shot him, he says, quote, I didn't want to go to jail. I knew he was going to turn me in, end quote. Besides Joseph's car that Heather had hotwired, one of the items that were stolen from Joseph's house was a .32 caliber Derringer. So now he doesn't want to go to jail for robbery, but he's going to go to jail for murder.
Who are these people? They're signing up for, these are like young.
They're teenagers.
Yeah, signing up for orgies. They're shooting people in the head, hot wiring cars.
And this is in the 90s.
Dang, these people are hard, man.
During Marvalis' interview, he talked about how they were walking around on Christmas Eve and came up to a girl at a payphone. They decided to rob her looking for money. While aiming the gun at her, they tell her to take off her shoes and jacket. Marvalis then looks at her and shouts, quote, Merry Christmas, bitch, end quote, and shoots her.
Dang.
Marcus described it as he told her that, then pow, pow, pow. The girl was Danita Gillette. James Levinson, in disbelief, says, quote, if that doesn't chill your blood, I don't know what would, end quote.
Exactly how I feel. Wow, this is shocking.
The day after Christmas, the posse needed money, so they figured they'd rob a store, the Mini Mart. Marvalis confesses about the shooting that they went to the store and demanded money, which was handed over, but they shot at everyone anyway, killing Sarah Abraham. They got $40.
No words.
No value for life at all.
None. $40. Even in the 90s, $40 was...
Just no value for life, period.
Yeah, disgusting.
After all the interviews are done, strangely, Detective Burke gets a call from Reverend Head.
I wish you all could have seen her pointing at me to warn me not to talk, but come on, she's just handing these things over. She's asking for it.
I know her way too well. It was just right there.
It's not my fault.
I swear. I didn't do it.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
This is a setup all day long.
The Reverend cannot believe that Laura Taylor was involved in this shooting spree and would like to come and minister to her. During their conversation, Laura tells the Reverend everything, including about 2 other shootings that the police did not know about. As if 4 aren't enough, she must think because she's 16, she's not going to get in trouble or she's going to go to juvenile hall or something.
And she's the worst one.
Well,
She's the most callous.
Marvalis, I think, is a little worse, but...
Well, she was bossing him too.
Well, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. I didn't know if I said that, but
you kind of made it clear throughout
Okay.
the story who was with who.
She brags there are 2 other bodies at a gravel pit and proceeds to tell Reverend Head exactly where they are. Marvalis Keene and DeMarcus Smith are questioned about the 2 bodies. The teens were Marvin Washington and Wendy Cottrell, who were part of the group. They were accused of snitching. Remember, they were worried about that?
Mm-hmm.
So Marvalis and DeMarcus picked them up and took them to the gravel pit. They made Marvin and Wendy get on their knees. Marvalis put a gun in Wendy's mouth. She screamed, "I ain't a snitch! I ain't a snitch!" Then he shot her. At the same time, DeMarcus shot Marvin. They returned to the car, reloaded, and shot at them some more. When detectives asked Marvalis if they intended on killing Wendy and Marvin when they picked him up, he said, "Pretty much."
They're
vicious.
These kids are too young to be this soulless. I mean, this is disturbing.
Detectives have gathered a mountain of evidence besides the confessions for all of them to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. Marvalis Keene was indicted on 6 counts of aggravated murders. Laura Taylor and DeMarcus Smith were indicted on multiple killings, and Heather Matthews was indicted on 2 counts of aggravated murder as an aider and abetter.
She never actually shot anybody?
No, she didn't. She was there contributing, but she never shot anybody.
Tying people up and hot wiring cars?
Right.
Wow.
Heather Matthews asked for a plea deal to testify against the others. She received 2 consecutive life terms.
That was her plea deal?
Yeah.
Thank God. They said they didn't let her off easy or let her off altogether.
They're all looking at it like we're looking at it. The system, the judge, everybody's looking at it like, are you flipping kidding me?
Yeah.
DeMarcus Smith pled guilty on the morning of his trial in the hopes for a lesser sentence and received 186 years. Laura Taylor, the tough girl, received a sentence of 133 years.
Good.
Marvalis Keene was convicted and received the death penalty. Marvalis was executed by lethal injection on July 21st, 2009. He had no last words.
Oh, they should have said to him what he said to Danita right before he killed her.
It wouldn't have been Merry Christmas, but it would have been something else. But I'm
Yeah.
sure they would have said the other word. Journalist Wendy Williams recalls, quote, "The only time you saw them show any kind of emotion is when it came time to be sentenced. Then they were crying and doing all of that."
Oh.
End quote.
My heart is bleeding.
Bleeding.
Yeah, not even.
Judge Brown's goal in sentencing the defendants to the maximum on every account consecutively was to convey a message to the parole board that these killers should never be released.
Couldn't agree more. You know, and I hate to think it, no less say it, that sometimes there's just no hope for people.
Mm-hmm.
But in this situation, I mean, it's how I feel. It's like, how do these people turn their lives around? It's too much.
Well, and especially Laura Taylor, who was supposedly a very intelligent girl. Like, she had a lot going for her.
Yeah.
And she killed Richmond Maddox, who was her ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you just do that?
It's not even like a stranger. She had a connection to this guy and was capable of shooting him in the head.
Mm-hmm. Very callous. They were just all soulless, callous individuals.
They really were. And it does make me sad to feel that way. But man, this is over the top. This is evil just to be evil.
And it's not just one person. You're talking, well, at least 3. One hanger-oner, but definitely 3. And I watched them laugh through all kinds of stuff. It was just sickening.
Oh, man.
It was sickening.
They're a pack. So you see how easily they influenced each other, and they could be influenced again.
James Levinson said, quote, "There's no explaining in rational terms why some people do what they do other than to say there's evil and to just give it up at that. The Christmas killers, as they're called, certainly they didn't experience a Christmas spirit." End quote.
That was a pretty deep, crazy, shocking story.
I told you.
I was not expecting that.
I said it was going to be brutal.
It is brutal. It's definitely brutal.
And at Christmas time. The whole thing is awful, horrific, just on its own. But it's amplified the fact that it was all at Christmas time.
Right. It just makes it so much extra. Well, thank you for bringing us that story. That little grim bit of, my gosh, the darkest coal you'd ever know. We appreciate it. It was a good story.
Well, thank you.
And thank you all for listening. We hope you take care, have fun, and don't forget to let your imaginations run wild. Bye.
Bye.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.